Is up, everybody? What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the VS Code weekly live stream. I'm your host. My name is Burke. It's good to see you. What's up, chat? What's up, Dave? Dave was 15 minutes early. Thanks for being here. Hey, before we get started, I have a question for you. I want to know, just drop it in the chat. Let us know. Do you use insiders or do you use stable? Insiders or stable? I want to know. Put it in the chat. You can guess which one I use. Here's a hint. I'm a very cautious guy. Just saying. All right, we've got a great stream for y'all today. Thank you for being with us. Couple of reminders before we get started. If you're on YouTube, you're in the right place to hit the subscribe button. It's going to feel good when you do it, so go ahead and do it. Also, go ahead and connect with us on TikTok. Hit that subscribe button. It's going to feel doubly good. So there's two things you can do today. 2 tasks, easy to accomplish. You'll sleep well tonight, I promise. And then lastly, join our meetup group. You'll be the first to know about new announcements, events we're having, things like that. You want to be the first to know. So what do we got? Stable, 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 both. Okay. All right. Stable, stable, stable. Lots of hellos. Hello, everybody. Well, thank y'all for being here. Let's get right into it. Today, we've got quite a special stream. Today, we are bringing you the designer on the VS Code team who is responsible for most of the design that you know in VS Code. Yes. And so with that, I'd like to welcome to the virtual stage here, Miguel. What's up, Miguel? How's it going, man?
Hey, everyone. Doing good. Doing good.
So most of the design, huh? One dude doing all that design. That seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, no, it's only been the last couple of years. So more recently, we actually got a couple more designers on the team. So now we actually have a design team, which is pretty awesome. So
fantastic. So you're responsible for all the icons, the icon redesigns. I remember that when the icon was redesigned. That's all you.
Yeah, all our teams. So yeah, feel free if you got any feedback, comments, feel free to direct them my way. I'm used to it.
Yeah, hit up Miguel on Twitter and give him all your design. Nobody cares. Nobody has any opinions about design, right?
Never, especially developers. No.
Right. I remember when we redesigned the VS Code icon the first time, and I was like, man, come on, nobody asked me. All right, Miguel, what are we doing today, man? What do you got for us?
Yeah, so today I kind of want to walk through and just talk about open source design. So I know oftentimes we talk a lot about open source and development, but one aspect that doesn't really get talked about a lot is design. So just kind of talking about how we've gone through and do a few examples of how we actually did open source design and involve the community, and then show a couple of examples of how we're still doing that today, and then welcoming the community to be part of that conversation.
Rock and roll, let's do it.
All right, sounds good. So for those who don't know, VS Code is open source. So if you go to GitHub onto our VS Code repo, you'll see instructions there on how to actually go up and get running and building VS Code. You can also create like issues and pull requests, and there's lots of links that kind of show you how to do that. But one thing that I wanted to highlight on here is if you go into our issues tab, we always have our monthly iteration plan pinned. And so this is what we're essentially shipping for the month. So for the release for September, you can actually go in here and take a look at what we're actively working on. So this gives you a great understanding of what's in progress. We have a little legend here that tells you what's in progress. We have broken down into different categories, and we always have an item here for UX. And so this has been more of a recent change where we tried to kind of push up more things that we're doing that around design explorations and trying to get feedback from the community. And so one example that I kind of want to walk through is how we went about and updated our iconography. So this is about a year or two ago. And so some of you may be familiar with the original, the OG version of VS Code that had sort of these sort of icon styles. And so at the time, this was a blend of the Visual Studio icons on Windows. And then also from GitHub, they had an icon set called Octocons. And so we had these two icons that didn't quite mesh together. So you can kind of see an example like these two icons that are very, very different. So we had lots of these, icons that look different. The colors were different as well. Some had colors, some did not. And then we had an issue that was filed from somebody on the team to kind of document all the ways that we've been inconsistent. So we wanted to just kind of address this issue. And then you can kind of see by the feedback from the community that there was a lot of feedback in terms of wanting to get this updated. So we went and decided to kind of tackle this and look at where everybody else was using icons in different parts of the products outside of VS Code. So we looked at different icon styles from, filled-in versions to outline versions to slightly thicker versions. There's just so many styles that are out there. So we want to figure out like what was one direction we wanted to go. So once we kind of nailed down to a couple of different concepts, we had examples of each and every single one of them. So then we had, like, for example, this style here, we listed out the pros and cons of each one. And then we actually showed them in context of what they look like. So we did this for several versions of icons. So we also looked at, obviously, octagons from GitHub to see if we can extend those. Lots of other variations. We also had the Microsoft design language, which is often referred to as MDL. So they have their own icon style that's used in a lot of their products. So we had kind of examples of what that would look like. And then at the time, Visual Studio was also looking to see how they could apply Fluid into their products. And so we were kind of seeing if we could leverage those icons as well. So once we kind of had these different concepts, we wanted to then kind of reach out to the community and let the community know what we wanted to do. But we wanted to pick at least like 2 of these. So we ended up landing on 2 concepts, which was the outline style and then the filled-in style. So purely because the outline style felt a little bit more modern, and a lot more of the newer apps were going that direction. And then Microsoft was also going in that direction with their library. And so we had the solid, and we also had the outline version. So we had these 2. The solid one was more in reference to like our previous one that we had, so people were more familiar with it. And so we just wanted to get a lot of feedback from the community. And then we kind of listed out some open questions of things we actually did not know what we wanted to do. So this was a way to kind of give the community an idea of like what's happening, what are we thinking about, what things are not definitive yet. And so then we just invited the community to really give us feedback. And so on this issue, you can kind of see just all the different feedback we were getting, which was great. The one issue we ran into is that people were kind of dissecting the mockups we had, like these little screenshots. So we figured we really need to get more solid feedback from users and how they actually work or in their actual workflow. So what we then did was we had to go in and create a build to kind of get this into people's hands. And so one of the things that we did was we took those 2 styles that we did. So we had like, these were the original sets. So we had the outline version and the filled-in version. And then we looked at every single icon we had in the product and just did iterations on each of those. So here's an example where the original icons we have, and then we were referencing the Microsoft design language icons just to see, we didn't really want to reinvent the wheel. And then in this red box is what the ones we actually did. So we had the outline version and the solid version. So you can kind of see all the various icons we had to go through. It was quite a lot of work to kind of get to them. I forget how many we ended up going, but it was probably in the thousands of icons that we designed at the time. So we did all these icons, and then to get an actual build is a little bit complicated. So if you've ever created an extension and created icons, we always have to reference a light and dark version just because of the way that the icons were implemented. So you really couldn't dynamically change the colors of the icons, even though they were SVGs. We couldn't leverage the way the SVGs changed their fills. So we had to do a lot of work to create the dark and light version. So here's an example of what that looked like. So we kind of referenced the original ones and then created variations on that. So once we did that, we kind of created a build, and then we posted it onto GitHub and said, hey, everybody, we have this build that we would love to get feedback on. And this is where we started to get a lot of great feedback. People started to use this in their workflows and to give us really concrete feedback into what the icons meant and lots of little issues that we had along the way. So we really collaborated with the community, which was great. One issue that we were kind of running into was that this was all consolidated onto our community on GitHub. So we wanted to kind of go outside of that and find people who were not really, on GitHub, people maybe on Twitter and Reddit. So we also went over to Twitter and kind of tweeted this out and just kind of mentioned that we were looking to do this to get feedback. So we had a link. We started to get lots of good feedback from the community there, and then also on Reddit. We kind of posted there as well. So if you're kind of in these communities, we try to kind of reach out into these other areas. So I'll kind of show an example of what that build looked like. So this is actually like the exploration build, like the first one that we did. And so we used like the little hack to use to change the icon themes, which was the file icon. So we have the outline version, which you can kind of see here in the activity bar, and so these other icons and how they change, and then the solid version. So we had these versions. Lots of people were kind of using them to give us feedback on which ones they prefer and why, and just trying to get an understanding of what direction we wanted to go in. So after we sort of did that, we had to kind of decide to go down a specific direction and go with one specific style. So after we were kind of going back and forth, we decided to kind of go with the outline version for a couple of different reasons. We did some usability testing to figure out which of these performed better, and ultimately both performed equally as well. And so over time, people would just adjust it to icons as long as those were still recognizable. And so we decided to go with outline version, mostly because it was a lot more modern, a lot more newer applications were using these. And also Microsoft was going down this direction as well with their own icons. So then we updated all of the icons in the product, and these were essentially what the final icons ended up looking like. And then because the Insiders build was just a custom build and you had to download it, we wanted to bring it to Insiders. So we eventually opened it up to Insiders. We turned it on by default before there was like a setting to turn this on. So now everybody was getting this. And so we started getting a lot more feedback, and we just continued to iterate with the community. So as we started to, progress and make iterations, we'd get feedback. We'd just kind of go back and forth. So this was a very long process, probably about 3-4 months, I would probably say, from when we initially started. And so we started to get lots of great feedback on this. And so we did eventually launch them. And so we kind of mentioned this in our release notes when we actually updated this. And then we also wanted to kind of give back to the community and open source the icons. So this is something that we haven't done before. So we went in and made this repo. It was an MIT license, so anybody can kind of go in and use these in any projects they wanted to. And so this was a great way to kind of give back to the community. And then also on Figma, we also had this in their marketplace. So if you're a designer or if you kind of work in Figma, this was also that was on there too. So you can kind of see the number of people that have kind of used that over time. So we were kind of doing that, which was great. The other issue that we wanted to update was the way that we actually use icons in the product. So I kind of mentioned this, that light and dark versions had to be referenced, and everything that was being used in the icons were more like image assets, which is not really dynamic. So we then went and updated our icons and used an icon font. So we converted all the SVGs into an icon font, and then created this. We ended up calling it Codicons, which is the icon name. And so if you go to the VS Code Codicons, this is actually the repo that we use on a regular basis to go in and update it. So here you can kind of go in and look at the icons. The neat thing about this was that anytime somebody wanted to reference an icon, we just referenced it once, and then it was used in the same places all the time, as opposed to before we had to kind of copy and paste a lot of files. So this reduced a lot of files, and it was a lot more dynamic. And then it also allowed us to theme the actual icons themselves. And so we ended up pushing this into as an NPM package as well. So if you use this in other projects or even in VS Code extensions, like in web views, you can kind of use those as well. And so this is sort of like a good stepping stone to kind of allow people to kind of, use icons in lots of different ways. And so, but ultimately, we also realized that not everybody was a fan of the icons. So we got lots of comments like this that people just did not like the icons. And when it came down to it, it was more of a preference that people really wanted the old icons. And so that kind of led to, since we already allow people to customize, their themes and also their file icons, why don't we go ahead and allow people to actually customize their icons? So then we worked to create what we call now product icon themes. So this is very similar to file icon themes, where anybody could go in and create a product icon theme and then be able to swap them out for whichever one they would like. So we have lots of guides and references on our documentation that talks about how to actually do this. And then if you wanted to kind of go into the product, you go into, inside of VS Code, and then you search for product. Actually, if you go to Command-Shift-P to the command palette and look for product icon theme, there's just the default one if you don't have any other installed. But if you go to install additional product icon themes, you'll actually get directed to the marketplace for the specific tag. And so you'll see here that we have a couple of different themes that have different styles. So for example, there's this material one, there's this carbon one, and there's this Fluent one that actually I published that was just taking the Fluent icons and changing them out. And so if you go back to the product icon theme, and then you can see as I'm toggling these different views, these are all being swapped out underneath. So this really helped kind of drive the force of, in the beginning, having like a really outdated icon system to now having a really dynamic icon system that anybody could really create any sort of icon theme, swap them out for whichever version that they want, and to really just give users the most customizations that they can do with their tool. So that was kind of like how we sort of went about creating that and how they kind of came about. So it was just like sort of this like it started with somebody addressing the inconsistencies of the icons to now really allowing the community to really customize it. So that was sort of like probably one of our biggest examples of how we kind of worked with the community to get a lot of feedback and iterate with them on the go. A couple of other examples of how we're still sort of doing this. Recently, we kind of updated our getting started experience or our walkthroughs. And so a little bit of backstory here. We initially wanted to have this sort of onboarding experience for new users because we knew that there was a couple of concepts that were hard to figure out from the community. So like things like the command palette, a lot of people didn't really know about that. Things like the extensions, we want to make it a lot easier. So we had this sort of like onboarding slideshow that you would normally see on a lot of other applications, especially on mobile. And so we got lots of good feedback from the community. People were kind of chiming in and saying that they would actually love to see this. But when we actually tested this, we found out that most people who went through this weren't really paying attention to these slides. So when we would ask them to do certain tasks, like, can you go in and install this extension, or can you do this one task? And there were tasks that were mentioned in the flow. People could not recall. So this implied that people really were not paying attention to this. So we kind of experimented for a while. And so ultimately what we decided after experimenting was we wanted to pivot a little bit. And so instead of going with this sort of onboarding slideshow, we decided to do walkthrough. So you could actually go in and click on individual items inside of the welcome screen, and then actually have content that allows users to kind of go through. So for example, if I go to a VS Code, and then you'll see here on the right-hand side, we actually have this now where we have these walkthroughs that we have some that are from VS Code, and we also have some that are from extensions. But if you kind of click on these, they actually walk you through on a couple of examples on how to do certain things. So there's like, support for different languages. So these are kind of like the basics here. If you go back under more, there's lots of other ones that are here. So there's like, if you're more like a advanced user, you might want to look at, side-by-side editing, how to work with Git, customizing the shortcuts, and things like that. So that was kind of like another example of how we sort of like iterated kind of out in the open, started to get feedback from the community. And yeah, so that's one of the recent things that we kind of did. And then lastly, the example that I want to kind of give is like kind of we were looking to see how we can kind of improve the overall UI of VS Code for new users. And so we knew that there's a lot of people that preferred either a higher density or lower density design. And so we kind of created this sort of concept that kind of took a lot of the inspiration from like Fluent UI in Windows 11, and also with Big Sur, and also with Ubuntu. So there was lots of these different ideas of how we can kind of create our own sort of design language. And so for those of you who are kind of like curious to see kind of like where we want to go potentially, here's an example of that. So for example, you'll notice here that we have like the labels underneath each of the activity bar items. There's a lot more spacing. The font size is a little bit bigger. If you go over to like Git, looking to see like, can we add in additional UI? So these are just kind of design explorations we're just kind of doing. Also, we wanted to kind of move some items into the top right. So for example, we had settings and accounts down here. We could potentially move them up here to save a little bit of space. And then we have this little toggle to toggle the density. So if somebody wanted a more higher density or lower density, they can do that. So these are a couple of different examples that we were looking at. And then lastly, the command palette was a big thing of, can we drive this to be more centered and easier to access, that's not just depending on a command or a keyboard shortcut. So these are just kind of concepts that we're looking at. And so we're always kind of looking to see and getting feedback from the community. So if you're interested in being part of that conversation, feel free to take a look at this issue. We'll post a link in the chat. But yeah, just kind of like as we design, we kind of like to get lots of feedback from the community and just kind of iterate with the community. And so, we try not to create anything that's sort of like new and secret. So we just try to do that in the open. So if you're always curious about what we're actively working on, you could always go to our iteration plans. You can look at the UX column, and it kind of shows you some of the things that we're actively working on. Like another example here is we're looking at profiles of what profiles could look like. And so is that something that looks interesting to you, you can kind of go in and take a look at some of the concepts and give us feedback. So yeah, that's kind of that's about it for the talk. So yeah, happy to take any questions, or if anybody has any thoughts, or yeah, thanks for talking about this.
Miguel, so many thoughts on themes and icons and everything else. Just scrolling through chat here, got a couple of pieces of feedback. I think it was let me scroll up here. I think it was Sambev wanted to know, he was just saying, can you fix the pandas theme? I don't know that you can fix other people's themes, but I thought I'd ask anyway. Miguel, can you fix the pandas theme?
I don't think I know the pandas theme. I don't think I've used it, but I can take a look. I can make a pull request, so that would help.
Right. Well, yeah. So give us a link, and we'll put Miguel to work fixing the theme with a pull request. So Sci-Fi Not asked, and I think we've answered this, how can I change the activity bar icons like the terminal icon? And that's with product icon themes. Is there any way to do that without making an entire theme? Like, can I just customize and change?
No, not currently. Currently, it relies on an icon theme. So another thing that people can kind of do is if you go into the marketplace, if you look up the Fluent one that I created, you can actually go in and fork it. So if you go into the repository, I kind of link to the repo that I use. You can kind of go in and just kind of change the icons and use that as a base. So if you go into like icons, here's like all the icons that I've gone in and updated. So it's a very easy way to kind of do it. And there's steps in the README on how to build it. So if you're kind of intimidated, you can kind of use this as a base. I've kind of published this, and there's a couple of people that have forked it. So that's one option there.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd love to see somebody create a product icon theme. If you do, let us know. And we'll promote it. I'll promote it in the next stream. I'll tell everyone to use it if you make it. Okay. Can I change the search icon? Sci-Fi Not's asking about changing the search icon. I think that's in the activity bar. Answered by yes. Product icon themes.
Yep. You can really change it to whatever icon you want it to be. So I had this like funny idea, like what if we have this like roulette of a product icon theme to like randomize the icons and see if you can figure out like what is what. Yeah, see how good of a developer you are.
I like it. I'm going to be honest, Miguel. I didn't even know. I mean, I knew about product icon themes, but I hadn't actually used them until just now. So while you were talking, I enabled material icon, product theme, the Fluent one, Carbon, just kind of messing around. It definitely does give VS Code a different feel. That activity bar is I don't know what it is.
Yeah. You could always hide it if it's too much, and see how you can move around.
So boy, put it back and turn on the material product icons, because those are kind of chunkier icons, and I tend to like that a little bit more. I wonder what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
Check these out, chat. Like see that? See how they're kind of like thick and full? I like that. What do y'all think? Yep. Okay, so let's see here. What else do we have? So this question, Skipper's asking, and I think this is different, but you might know the answer. The new bracket colorizer feature that we shipped? Is it possible to change the colors that are used in that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So let me see if I can pull up a good example that has the bracket pair colorization. And then I think because I'm sharing, this is going really slow. So for example, that's not a good example. But yes, we do have the way to kind of change the icon or the color. So for example, if I pull up my settings, move this over. If you go, actually, I was actually looking at some of these other themes. So if you actually go into your settings, and then there's this workbench color customizations option that you can actually go in and look at the different color tokens you have. So if you do like control space, you can actually see all the different themes that you have in here that you can customize a color token just for a theme, or if you scroll down further down, you get to see the rest of the themes in here as well. So here's like the editor one. So for bracket pair, if you just look up like bracket, I think it's highlight. Yeah, there we go. You can actually see all the different colors you can do. So you can do up to 6 different colors. So like, for example, the first one I believe is yellow. If I change it to red, you can see here it's changed to red. So yeah, we do have it all the way up to 6 different colors. So that is customizable, and feel free to kind of change those. I know since it's a newer feature, not a lot of themes have actually implemented them yet. So I think over time, the themes will kind of adopt this. But yeah, you can definitely change this.
That's so cool. And for folks in chat, hey chat, have y'all ever checked out Cooler? I think it's called Cooler, Kuler. It's an Adobe site, cooler.com. And it's got all these color palettes that you can pick from. That's great if you want to do the customizations like that, but you need a little bit of, is that it? Cooler? Yeah. But you need a little bit of inspiration, and it just like creates a palette for you. Anyway, check that out. It's rad.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's really cool.
So check this out, man. Karthik says the Fluent icon theme should be default out of the box. Nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to say material icon theme should be default out of the box. That's my personal
See,
thing.
this is why we created the product icon themes. Everybody has a different style, a different preference. Same thing with themes. People prefer different themes. So light theme, dark theme, high contrast theme.
Here's an interesting one. I don't know. Every time I open Insiders, I get 3 empty pages called VS Code and Insiders. Really? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like, you get 3 tabs that say that?
Maybe they have like different windows that are always open, because you can have multiple windows open as you kind of move to different examples. So maybe that's it. I don't know.
I'd actually like to see that. Let's see. Israt, what theme was I using for the video tab out? I see you're following us on YouTube Shorts. Thank you for that. Yes, that theme, and the theme that I always use is the GitHub Dark Dimmed theme, which I like quite a bit. It's a really good one. Did you make that one, Miguel?
No, that was all the GitHub team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe
they
you were doing
they have a full team kind of dedicated to working on the different themes, and they have a good amount of themes they've created. So
yeah, I just figured if you did all the design on VS Code, maybe you were doing all GitHub's design too.
Yeah, in my spare time in the evenings, I kind of do a little bit of GitHub. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you need free design for your company, Miguel's gonna. All right, Miguel, I'm sorry to do this to you. I have to. I knew someone's gonna ask this question, so I'm just gonna throw it up here and let you answer it. A Microsoft employee using Brave browser? What's up, man?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. Like at Microsoft, like you use whatever tool you want to use. Like I feel like a lot of people also kind of see people on Macs are like, whoa, somebody on a Mac. You can, whatever tool you need to use to get the job done, people do that. So I've tried lots of different browsers. I've tried Edge, Chrome, Firefox. Brave is just the one that I always end up gravitating towards. I just love the way that they've kind of have a lot of things built into it. So yeah.
All right, nice. To each their own. Look at this. Another vote for the fluid icon. That's two.
I mean, I feel like I can't take the full credit because I did not actually make the icons, but at least having them in the marketplace makes it a little bit easier.
Amazing. All right. Yeah, we got some people use DuckDuck. I hear. Yeah, I noticed that you went to DuckDuckGo as well. So clearly you're staying off the grid, Miguel.
Trying to.
You've got some privacy concerns.
It's hard to do that with my job, but yeah, trying to.
No, I hear you. Same. So here's a question that I have. Let me just hide this. Miguel, I would like to be able to theme VS Code from top to bottom. Like I want to have a gradient in the sidebar. I want the welcome screen to have a custom image. Why can't I do those things?
Yeah, we get a lot of requests like that, and it really just depends on like a lot of the people that are kind of asking like why they're wanting to do that. So I think from VS Code, we try to sort of keep it like one of our big philosophies is to try to be like as minimal as possible, like trying to keep productivity at the center. And so these other things tend to sort of like detract from it. Like I know there's a couple of themes like the synthwave theme that adds a couple of gradients and looks really cool. But sometimes, some of those like, adding those like background images can kind of get in the way a little bit of like the productivity. So we try to sort of not go too far down that road, but we try to do other ways that we can kind of customize. So that, so theming, icons, fonts, those are all the things that we're kind of looking to customize. So we're always looking for new ways to customize it. So, I know we're actively also looking at like, can we allow people to change the font that's actually used in the product as well? That's been a really big request that we've seen. So we're always looking at ways to kind of increase the customization. But yeah, those are one of the hard ones that we have a hard time kind of adding in, just because we feel like it kind of takes away a little bit of the actual editor of what it's made for at its core.
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of support here. So Precious is just saying, yeah, like a little bit of acrylic and some transparency. I think they're making a good point here, like the customizing the Windows terminal. I do that too, right? Like my terminal is like kind of transparent. It's got this image and all the colors are customized. But I understand that as well. I know that there's actually an extension that I don't know if it's still out there that allows you to customize the CSS and the JavaScript to VS Code and immediately puts your VS Code in an unsupported state. And I don't even remember the name of the extension.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a very popular one. I forget what it's called, but yeah, it does corrupt your VS Code. So yeah, we don't,
Yeah,
we
and you
don't
can't update. VS Code doesn't update anymore.
Exactly. Every time we do an update, it kind of erases it. So.
All right.
But one last thing I do want to say though about the transparency, like I do think that once we do have support from that, from like the architecture, like we use Electron under the hood to kind of wrap it all together. Once we have some of these like native hooks to kind of add some of that transparency, it might make it a little bit easier to kind of add those in. Especially like, you know, like you said, Windows Terminal has this. And so, and lots of these other applications like Mixer and Fluent, they're both kind of looking very similar nowadays. And so there might be a day where we actually kind of add that as well. So, but you never know.
Nice. I'll take it. One more. Karthik is back, full of good questions today. Would VS Code just reflect the Windows 11 design aesthetics? I'm not sure what those are. You probably know more about that than I would.
Yeah, I think that's more talking about like the Fluent kind of design, the new updates. I think one of the things that I kind of mentioned earlier in the stream is probably the closest thing to that, which is the sort of like new design that kind of adds in a little bit of elements of like higher density, a lot more padding, and so it's. Because VS Code is a cross-platform application, we're not just on Windows. We're also on Mac and Linux and on the web. So we're trying to figure out how do we create sort of a design language that fits across all these other platforms while still staying true and being unique to the editor. So we're always kind of looking to see like what that looks like and how we can kind of improve it. So, but that's probably our answer, because we always, especially with Windows 11, people are always asking about, are we going to adopt Fluent? So that's usually what the answer that we give everybody.
Awesome. Well, we're out of time, folks. So now you know what to do. Go change your product icon theme. Thank you, Miguel, for being with us today. Lovely to have you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And thank you, everybody else. We'll see you back. We're going to have James Quick is going to be with us, I believe, next week. James Quick sharing his favorite VS Code tips. You're not going to want to miss that. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
See ya.